Welcome back. I know last time we met we began reading in our new domain called A New Nation, and it might be a little puzzling right now. Well, how do we get from, just a few English colonists and settlers to an entire nation from coast to coast, going up and down with 50 different states? Well, we're going to get, scale it back, scale it back. Right now we're just at the 13 original British colonies. And if you remember, they're called, all up and down the East Coast, the British colonies, that were formed from 1619 to 1732. These were the colonies. Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. So, you had to start it around the East Coast. The same way in which we learned when we talked about early American civilizations and how people would build civilizations near water. Because water means that you can grow food. Food means you can establish cities. Cities leads to having some form of leadership. Leadership, having leaders in place and rules and laws. And then we can get into the whole idea of, religion and everything like that. We've talked about that before. Same thing when the English settlers and colonizers came to what we now refer to as the United States and North America. But it was not the United States yet. Right now it is just 13 original colonies up and down the eastern coast of what is now the United States, which does include our state. Yes, this state used to be one of the original 13 colonies. I know, right? So, we are learning about some of the important events that led to the creation of our country or nation, the United States of America. As the British colonies grew, a larger workforce was needed in the colonies. Before long, the Africans who were brought to North America were no longer treated as indentured servants, but as enslaved people. And as you remember, indentured servants had to work for a number of years before they were free to choose what work to do and where to live. Enslaved people had no such freedom and were never paid for their work. These freedoms, as well as many others, were denied to enslaved Africans who had been brought to the Americas. Now today, you will hear how Great Britain spent a lot of money helping to set up and protect the colonies. Great Britain wanted to get some of that money back by asking the colonists to pay taxes on goods. Taxes are extra money people pay when they buy certain things. For example, if you want to buy something that costs $1, then you will need $1.08 because you'll have to pay 8 cents in taxes. You'll also hear how we vote to elect representatives or people to represent us in government. Representatives are people chosen to speak on behalf of a larger group. Listen to learn about some of the problems the colonists encountered and find out why colonists started thinking about making their own rules and no longer following the King of Great Britain. For a long time, almost everyone who lived in what's now called America was proud to be a British citizen, ruled by the great ruled by the King of Great Britain. But then things began to change. The King and the British government or Parliament had spent a lot of money helping to set up and protect the colonies. To help pay for these expenses, Parliament decided to make the colonies in America pay taxes to Great Britain. I mean, that actually kind of makes sense. We spent all this money, you should pay us back. Okay. Let's see how that goes though. Now, taxes are extra money people pay when they buy certain things. For example, today we may pay taxes when we buy clothes at a department store, food in a restaurant, or gasoline for the car. Depending on the state where you live, you may have to pay $1 or $2 more for your new shirt than what's listed on the price tag, or a few extra cents for your sandwich than the price listed on the menu. But these stores do not keep this extra money. They must give the extra money or taxes to the government. These days, we vote and elect representatives or people to represent us in government. These people make decisions about how to best spend the taxes to provide public services that benefit all who live here, like all of us. Yes, the government uses the taxes to help pay for things that everybody needs, like schools, public transportation, roads, water, garbage service, police and fire protection, and other public services. Many people agree that it's a good use of money and don't mind paying taxes for a good cause. But back in the time when the colonies were first established, the people who lived in the colonies were not permitted to vote and elect representatives or people to represent them in the British Parliament on the other side of the ocean. So many people who lived in the American colonies in the 1700s felt that it was unfair for the British king to ask them to pay taxes. It's like, oh, this is where we have a problem. I don't have a say in where my money's going and what programs I'm helping support. This is where the problem came in. Okay. The colonists were asked to pay extra for stamps, sugar, and other things. Because the colonists could not voice their opinions to the British government, though, through representatives, why they wondered, should they have to pay taxes? It just didn't seem fair to them. Not hard to know. All over the colonies, people grew more and more angry, but it was in the colony of Massachusetts that tempers flared the most. King George of Great Britain sent troops to try and keep the peace in Boston, but it didn't help very much. Then, in 1773, the British Parliament did something that the colonists could not stand. They passed a law called the Tea Act and tried to force the colonists to buy tea from one British company only, charging a large tax for the tea. The colonists did not think it was fair to force them to pay more for tea, and they refused to pay taxes on tea, one of their favorite drinks. They began sending shiploads of tea back to Britain and ordering tea from Holland, another European country, instead. This made the king even angrier. He told them that they could not send any more tea back to Great Britain without paying the tax. Because of this, the colonists of Massachusetts revolted or rose up against the British king. They decided they would not accept the king's decision. Shiploads of British tea continued to enter the port of Boston, Massachusetts. So a port is a place on the coast where ships load and unload supplies. So see, boat, ship, or water? Yeah. So on a December night in 1773, a group of men known as the Sons of Liberty planned the most unusual tea party. Smearing their faces with soot, grease, and streaks of red paint, they stuck feathers in their hair, disguised as Mohawk tribe members, a common symbol of freedom at the time. They made their way down to the harbor. Climbing aboard 3 British ships, they dumped 342 chests of valuable tea into the Boston harbor. This meant the British lost tea and money. This event became known as the Boston Tea Party. Furious, King George of Great Britain closed the port of Boston, one of the American colony's most important ports. He told them that they would not receive any more goods from Britain until they paid for the tea that they had destroyed. Now remember, goods are things that can be traded, bought, or sold. And they're still a pretty new nation. They're still a pretty new, new to the land. They don't have everything they need all the time. They need those trade routes. They need to be able to get stuff in and out. Apparently they're not getting anything new until they pay for that tea. With no supplies coming from Great Britain, there was nothing for the colonists to sell in their shops. So people had to close their shops. Many people lost their jobs. Food was scarce. Colonists from up and down the East Coast helped out, sending money and supplies to Massachusetts. What were the colonists to do? What would they say to the British king? The people of Boston began to talk of war against Great Britain and its king, but other colonists warned them not to act so quickly. Wait a bit, they suggested. It's never a good idea to fight back without cooling off a bit first. All 13 colonies decided to come up with a plan together. They held a big meeting in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, about midway between the furthest New England colonies and the furthest southern colonies. Each colony elected representatives to attend the meeting. It was the first time that representatives from all the colonies, except Georgia, met together in one place. They called themselves the Continental Congress. Leaders in the colonies were divided. Some remained loyal or faithful to Great Britain and the king. They were called loyalists. Makes sense. Okay. After After all, they said, we're British too. Others were beginning to think of themselves not as British citizens, but as Americans. They wanted to rule themselves instead of being ruled by a faraway king. These people were called patriots. Members of the Continental Congress included George Washington from Virginia, a young army commander who had helped protect the colonies. Benjamin Franklin was there too, a Philadelphian known for his ability to get people to work together. Though unable to attend, Thomas Jefferson, known as an excellent writer, was elected as a representative from Virginia. Okay. I'm pretty sure we'll see these men a few times again, though. At that first Continental Congress, the representatives decided to approach the king in a friendlier way. They sent him a letter telling him that they wanted to work things out peacefully. They asked the British Parliament to stop making laws or rules for them. We feel that we should create our own laws since we are not able to vote for laws in Parliament, they said. That's a quote from the letter. In the meantime, while they waited for an answer from the king, the colonists decided to stop selling goods to Great Britain and to stop buying goods from Great Britain. At the end of the meeting, the colonists were still split in their opinion about what to do. The loyalists hoped that the king would grant their requests, letting them make their own laws while still remaining British. The patriots kept things stirred up, talking of going to war and breaking away from Britain altogether. It certainly was not a calm time. And you're going to have to wait till next time to find out what went down with the loyalists, the patriots, and the British. Whew, getting a little... Alright, so let's answer some questions that reflect this bit of information we learned about today. So, what are taxes and what are they used for? Okay, it's a little tricky one. So taxes are an extra bit of money paid to the government to use for like goods and services. So when we buy things, we pay a little bit extra so that we get those things back in terms of schools, transportation, police, water, garbage services, teachers, you know. So what are taxes? Taxes are extra money paid for things to be used for public services. So like the things that we all have access and need to be able to use is paid for by the extra money we pay on little things here and there. So yeah, all that stuff adds up. Everything affects something else. So the King of Great Britain and the British government governed and ruled the 13 British colonies. Why did the King and the British Parliament decide to tax the British colonies in America? Yeah, they wanted to get some of their money back. They had put a lot of money into getting the colonists here, to get the colonies established, to get this so that, you know, people weren't just starving and dying. Like, there was a lot of work and money put into that. So they wanted to get some of their money back, which is not an outlandish idea if you really think about it. So, why did the King and the British Parliament decide to tax the British colonies? Because they wanted to get some of their money back for their investment. They wanted to get some of their money back. Okay, now the British colonies felt angry about being taxed. Why do you think they felt that way? Okay, it's a big word. It's representatives. Okay, so yeah, their voices weren't being heard. Their thoughts, their wants, their opinions about how the tax money should be getting spent was not being accounted for because they had no representatives in the parliament, in the British government. So they were angry. They felt angry because they had no representation. No taxation without representation. I'll tell you more about that later. No representation. That actually became one of their slogans going forward. During this time, no taxation without representation. You should not be taxing me if I have no way in having input on the process that determines where and how these taxes are spent. Also not, I can see both sides of the argument. I really can. During the Boston Tea Party, the colonists dumped tea into the Boston Harbor. Did the Boston Tea Party solve the problem of tea being taxed? Absolutely not. That's a big no. How do you know it did not solve the problem? Because the king closed the port. The king cut off supply lines. No. And we know because the king cut off the supply lines. No. Because, we know this because the king closed the ports. They couldn't get supplies in. They couldn't get goods out. They were stuck. Whole shops were having to shut down in this time because they had no way of getting what they needed to keep their shops running. They had no way of selling and trading the goods that they were manufacturing or making. And it's like, it was a pretty tense time. It was a pretty tense time. And, just listening to and breaking down the points of view of the British and of the colonists, they both make good points. Look, we put a lot of money into this. We want a return on it. Yeah, but we don't have any say of how you're spending our money. We don't want to be a part of that. I can see why it could get tense. I could see it. But you're going to have to wait till next time to see how this escalates or de-escalates. I can't wait. I'll see you guys later. Bye.